networker is like a great interviewer.
I'm huge on authenticity, guys. It's a big part of my message.
Claim your local listings and don't get caught paying someone for your local listing.
If you want to be successful, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
And when in doubt, give to other people and don't expect anything in return. But in giving to other people and helping them, it almost always comes back.
It's using the power of partnership, creating trusted partner networks to work with you to make your company be an offer more than just you.
They've done 90% of the work. It's your job to do the last 10% to meet them in the middle.
Don't let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast, brought to you by Advanced Septic Services and Fuse Networks. My name is Galen.
And I'm Joe.
We're coming at you from the BD Local Studios in Tacoma, Washington. So, Joe, for our new listeners and viewers tuning in for the first time or listening, can you tell everyone how our podcast came to be?
Sure. So we first started out as a Facebook group page where we wanted to bring on bring businesses together to kind of ask questions, share tips, kind of help each other out. And being that we're in marketing, we get a lot of questions outside of marketing about business, about kind of all of the different topics related to business. So we thought, what a better way than to just start a podcast and bring on different speakers that talk about topics as it relates to business.
Awesome. Our previous guest, before we get started, just a quick thought, is U.S. Army retired Colonel David Fivecoat of the Fivecoat Consulting Group. Mm-hmm. So Joe, fellow Army guy, what was one of your main takeaways from when Colonel David Fivecoat was on?
Biggest thing was with goal setting and how important it is to always revisit your goals, usually 1 every 3 years, just to make sure that you're staying on task and that you're reaching your goals, because usually someone will set a goal, they'll hit it, and then sometimes they just don't readjust what their goals are.
Awesome. So today's topic is something we do not know anything about. So we're really excited to have our guest, Keeson Patel, on. Joe, start off with
Sure.
The intro.
Kison Patel is the founder and CEO of Dealroom, an M&A lifestyle management software, and creator of M&A Science.
Keeson has over a decade of experience as an M&A advisor and developed Dealroom after experiencing firsthand a number of deep-seated industry-wide inefficiencies and challenges.
He is well known in the M&A space and has over 16,000 followers on LinkedIn. He also has the #1 M&A podcast in the world. Everyone welcome Kison.
All right.
Gentlemen,
thanks for coming
taking the time to hang out today.
Yeah, let's do this. So we asked our guests the same 3 questions. So I'll start with the first question. So what are some early lessons learned as an entrepreneur?
The value of creating a feedback cycle. I think that was the biggest thing. I think as an entrepreneur, you get it and fall in love with your own ideas and you follow through, you take ownership of them, you build on it and try to take it out into a product. A lot of that activities to go from A to B, you're driving it off of assumptions on what you think. And we get caught up in that. I think there's a lot more you need to do as an entrepreneur to objectively try to knock out some of your assumptions or validate your assumptions. And that was a big mistake that we made in building an outline of a solution to create and getting that feature creep where you put way too many things in that outline. And then you got to rummage through to figure out where to start. If I were to go back, if we created this feedback loop to validate what problem we're solving for, we would have really honed in on the key problem to solve. In fact, we probably would have had a better idea of what to solve. And that focus would allow us to build that right functionality from the start that would have hit with the customers we're trying to serve. And that's the time, if we were to spend talking to maybe 40 of those prospective customers or cohort of who we're trying to serve, we would have got us there. We did it eventually. We had a rough beginning for about 15 months, then went back to the drawing board and took that approach. And that led to creating this feedback loop of validating the problem. But even in the early phase of prototyping a solution, we would continue getting feedback and then found it to be much more cost effective to make these alterations during this prototype design phase, that if we could do that and have a less chances, the risk of making changes once it's post and we got a published product, we're able to get things out a lot quicker. And then you follow the agile model, delivering thing in your increments of value. But I think the big thing was just being qualitative about getting feedback constantly as you develop and take a solution out to market. And now we got to learn it again the harder way about your go to market. Because while you're doing that, if you can also get feedback on your go to market, otherwise that becomes a whole effort that you got to keep getting feedback on. So big lesson, build a feedback loop, continuously learn, iterate, evolve as fast and cheap as possible.
Awesome. So let me ask you this then. What is the best piece of advice that you've been given?
I don't know if it was somebody who just came up to me at a bar and just said, here's some life advice for you. But
two rounds in, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, just say, man, I think you need this. I could tell.
Yeah.
You're here at this bar slamming shots. Here it is. It was a book I read called Just Listen. I remember early beginnings of the Dealroom when I had 5 people in the team and I was struggling with leadership. I remember trying to read leadership books and it wasn't landing with me. And I started looking at organizational psychology books and I came across Just Listen, and it made a lot of sense of the way you connect with people to really empathize with them.
Mm-hmm.
If you can build that as a cornerstone of how you're building relationships, to spend the time to listen first, understand how a person thinks, how they feel, why they feel that way, get inside their head. This helps you overcome a lot of things around why you may not be aligned around common goals. Or if you have some differences, how can I really understand your perspective to know where we can come to our common terms on these difference of views that we have. So I think Just Listen was that form of advice I got in a long format of a book around how to really listen and connect with people in a way that's meaningful.
Nice.
So since this is a marketing podcast, I have to ask, why is marketing important?
That's like your face. It's just it gives you who you are in the world. You know, it's either people don't know about you or they know about you. And marketing provides that, especially when we look at this digital community or world we live in, that it's all through mediums and channels and how you interact. I think that's the big thing. It's who your identity is.
Right. Not everyone has the prettiest face, so we're not trying to catfish people and saying one profile and you're someone else. But I get what you're saying. In the digital age, your presence out there speaks a whole lot.
It's a delivery of value, right? Because it's one thing to have a brand, but if I can build a reputation for being the brand that constantly delivers value to our industry completely free. Right. And that's what we're doing. We're interviewing subject matter experts to learn how they've overcome some unique challenges, sharpen our own skills for problem solving and decision making. If we can do and be able to share what we're learning, these skill sets, and provide that to our audience that has that same interest, they're trying to be better marketers, get that 1% improvement a day, then we're onto something like that.
Right.
That's what I want to create is our, at the end of the day, as a business, we're going to survive and thrive around our ability to create value.
Right.
Right.
And if I can even allow this sort of marketing approach to create that aura around all these practitioners, I can find some way to, in a light touch way, to create value for them. That only allows them to build our reputation and trust with the market, so that when we do have conversations to further explore specific problems they're trying to solve, it allows us to do so with this level of authority that we can be objective about it and create a good win-win offering.
Right. So speaking of win-win offering and creating value, websites are a tremendous value for a small business, and we're really proud of our #Valor Cares initiative. Joe, can you speak on that a little bit, please?
So it started a couple years ago when the pandemic started, and we wanted a way to give back to businesses who may be struggling. They know they need a website. Maybe they don't have a website built yet, or they don't have control over websites. So our way to give back is to build free websites for businesses. And so now, we're just doing that every single month, meeting with businesses, and people will go to our website, our podcast website, or our marketing website, and they'll submit their information, and then we'll choose 1 or 2 winners every single month. And from that, now we have a new partner with that called Waymark. They're out of Detroit, where they're going to give 1 free month of videos to businesses who are also Valor Cares winners.
Awesome. So Q Image 5, now we come to the part of our podcast, our A Advanced Septic, Pump You Up quote of the day. Found a quote by Dave Bookbinder, which I'll read right now. The value of a business is a function of how well the financial capital and the intellectual capital are managed by the human capital. You'd better get the human capital part right. So Keeson, your quick thought on that.
Getting the human capital right. I mean, that's what a business comes down to. I think I've been reflecting on this and the path we've gone from going from 0 to 40 people in the company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much of our decisions all about the people you're bringing in.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes less and less of your daily tactical activities and strategy, which is still there, but you realize so much of the impact really comes from the people that you're bringing in your organization. So just keeping that part of the strategy, like being uniquely objective about who you're bringing into your company.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now we come to our Fuse Networks Did You Know segment. Innovation in the workplace doesn't have to be an annoyance for your team. At Fuse Networks, we frequently discuss how the solutions we can offer can make business processes and procedures more effective. But in doing so, we frequently overlooked how the implementation of these solutions, especially in terms of your digital transformation, have impacted your human resources. Contact Fuse Networks for your free consultation. So I found a couple of myths, since we don't know much about M&A or mergers and acquisitions, where we brought an expert to learn from the best. So that's what we're doing today. So, Keeson, this first myth I want you to bust or debunk. Business valuation uses the same multiple for similar businesses.
No, I would take that to the opposite extreme. The value of a business is distinctly unique to the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Each individual buyer is going to have their own perception of the value of your business and what it means to them. Big, large corporation that has big dreams and potential in your product will pay more than the one that wants to look at it as a situation they can really fix up and rebuild and sell in the next 3 years. They're going to look at it completely different and have their own metrics of valuing the business.
This next myth, business value is derived from tangible assets.
No, it depends. You're selling a closed down factory. You got some all tangible assets, but there's a lot you consider in terms of the goodwill for an organization, the non-tangibles, their IP, and the things that have the real intrinsic value of an organization, especially all these digital companies.
So do SaaS companies or like these online companies, you have an app, like an online service, do those assets get valued more than, when you guys go in and look at a company, what are some of the things that you guys look at for those kind of assets?
It's who's valuing it. Is it the guy that's doing it for the sake of our tax report and we need to throw a third party valuation on things? And we're really trying to figure out how to write those expenses off and do our amortization schedules. Or are we looking at the strategic value of this in terms of what it would make sense, why we would acquire this business, if we're acquiring it because of the revenue and that subscription growth, or if it's mainly the technology. Maybe they haven't developed their sales, but their technology is pretty cool and would fit well with our portfolio so we can enhance our capabilities of delivering value to our existing customer base. They're very different. There is one over the other is going to be more predictable. But then based on that bet, what are we willing to pay? So I think that's where things really change is why are you looking, how are you looking at the value for what? And then you build around that.
Awesome. Next myth number 3, valuation only looks at today's numbers.
Not anymore. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Everything is off of some future state. It's all, it's just, in today's market, You cannot buy a business and expect it to hum along and things are fine. You will not service the debt ratio or get a decent return. You have to model out some synergies. How are you going to create value post close? What activities are you going to do? Are you going to lay off some people and cut some unnecessary expenses? Especially if you're combining companies, you can do that pretty easily. Or do you have some real drivers of how you're going to grow revenue? In large company, they already have an established distribution network and there's commonalities and customers to serve. They can probably find some ways to dramatically increase the revenues there. But if you don't have those means, then you better be a lot more conservative on your predictions.
So when you're a small business owner, you're not just looking, you don't look at like the last 2 or 3 years of, your revenue year after year plus today's plus what you're modeling for the future then?
If you're selling like a Subway shop, like a little franchise where the state of revenue is pretty much expectation for it to be flat, then yeah, you can sort of create a metric that is templated against other similar size location businesses. But if it's in a market, you're looking at mid-sized businesses, the typical private equity-backed transactions, it's highly competitive. There's a lot of people after those assets. In fact, last year was so crazy that a bank would throw a business, 30 people are raising their hands with interest.
Oh, wow.
And how you're trying to manage those conversations, the people that want to interview the management team. And you're just creating a little race to who can close it first. And they're just taking all the risk. They're skipping a lot of the steps of diligence and things like that. Yeah, so that's where it just gets so fast and objective, and how do you got to get the deal done? And then that's where it varies so much because those buyers have a distinct view of how they would generate value for the business. Some are just under the gun to go spend some money because they've raised it and they need to go spend it, so they just don't know better.
Well, this next one just tees up good for that. Myth number 4. Valuation amount equals purchase price. So is that similar to like we're outside of Seattle, the house, like similar to the housing market? Like, all right, here's your house worth $700,000, but someone's buying it for $900,000. Is it no different in this space also?
Yeah, because if you go down and you're looking at small businesses, you get third party valuation, then it's all negotiable, right? You got your things like, hey, you got a lot of improvements you need to make. Your franchise is going to require a PIP list. Then you can leverage that and start putting your price to it. But when we look at these larger mid-size and up transactions, people know that. Like, there's no defined valuation. You're not really doing that ahead of time. You can build your case on why you think it's worth something, but I don't give a shit because I have to create my own value, period.
Right.
I'm going to pay you what I think it's worth. I'm not going to pay you what you think it's worth.
Right.
That's why you're not putting a price for this larger entity to sell. Like, I'm got to use and for a fair reason. You can entertain a multitude of buyers, sophisticated, highly sophisticated to highly unsophisticated. And in some cases, you may want to do that. You may objectively be just looking for the top dollar, and maybe it's the more unsophisticated buyer that's going to pay it because they don't do as much of diligence and kind of know what the forthcoming risks are. And then in that case, yeah, you may want to keep the different buyers in the darks. They could be.
Myth number 5, having low expenses is always good.
Now, if you're selling a company, people want to know that you're not tightening, the PE thing, right? You cut a bunch of expenses and you tighten up the money you would invest on growth to put it towards the bottom line so you can boost the valuation up, right? And people know better. Like, I would look at a company and know better. So that way it's you wanted to show some good growth and you should be investing and really humming along. Like, I want to invest in a company with a motivated team and they got some big aspirations, big goals to solve. They're creating value. They're all growing together. If it's sort of, hey, a lot of frustration and tensions are going because they've been just slaughtering pieces of their business to show bottom line profits. I don't want that.
Right. So this last one, myth number 6, could be more of an opinion, but I don't need a valuation to sell my business. So what do you say to those small businesses out there that say that?
Part of me wants to say you don't need a valuation, but if you're really selling a business where there's other like businesses out there,
Mhm.
There's a lot of comparables, and to know what comparables are, may not be a full valuation, but just at least knowing what those comparables are would be valuable to make sure you get a good price for your business. Last thing you want to do is sell something and feel you undersold it. And especially if there's a lot of comparable business out there. If you have a really unique business, you're serving a unique market with a unique problem,
Mhm.
it's going to be very difficult to find those comps. You probably just do the research you can, but then ultimately you're not going to have that a validated benchmark. So you have to be prepared for that, and network with these investment bankers can help you guide you on that, what the value of the business would be.
All right, so we want to get into, I guess, talking about the topic a little
Yep.
more, mergers and acquisitions. I guess our ultimate goal is really, I guess, best practices when selling your business. So those small, medium-sized businesses. We've heard it some with some clients where, if you own a business 30 years, pandemic happened, maybe it's their way to the timing to step out, or the person who's been with the business, it's kind of flatlined. They see opportunity, so they want to take over the business and take it to the next level. So just a couple things.
So what are 2 to 3 things that businesses should consider when they're selling their business?
I'd say 3 things would be strategy, your expert network, and being unwieldily curious about every goddamn thing that's happening through the process.
Yeah.
Right. So strategy, just really think it through. We think about it buying a company, what the strategy is, but selling a company, what's driving you to do it? Like what's the what? Because you got to think there's certain elements of it where you would run a long process versus a short process. Where objectively I'm trying to get top dollar, I'll hire a banker, run a competitive process. If objectively I'm trying to find the best home for my team that I built so that they can grow and have success, future career, and they're happy, then I'd play the long game and really start dating a bunch of companies through partnerships and really find where there's that strong culture fit to come together as an organization.
Right.
So that's thinking through the strategy, because then go date around, go meet these corporates and talk to them and think of it more that way. The others is your expert network. Throughout this process, selling a business, surround yourself with people who have done it before. Similar company, similar industry, especially your lawyer. Don't go to bat with some generalist lawyer that, oh yeah, I did a deal a couple of years. No. Find somebody that is a pro that you really, really admire for how many deals they've done, how intelligent they are. They can talk about it, explain deal terms. Find that person. Don't find the one that you golf with. Don't do that. And then you too, if you're in the banking process, be objective. Like interview a bunch of bankers, find the best one, or really have that network of experts. And then I think most importantly is just the worst case situation that you screw up the most isn't about the money. It's a little bit that I sold it for less than I get. It's more about what happens to your business afterwards. When you got to look back and you see a business that's continuing to grow, your team members happy, or do you see a burning, sinking ship and some miserable teammates that are not just sort of disappointed? They felt you left them to drown and die.
Right.
And that's going to be your biggest founder entrepreneur remorse in exiting a business. And if you through this process, you can be wildly curious about every little thing that's happening to make sure you understand who this buyer is, the difference between the buyer, what are their strategies, how do they plan on executing on that strategy, what's going to be your role involved, because a lot of times they want to keep you around. There's a big growth plan, there's a this and that. Well, how are you going to be involved? What's your comp going to look like if you did that? What's your title going to, all these little changes that are going to happen, how are you going to be involved? And it really starts getting you thinking more about the culture of the company, how those organizations are really going to come together. And that allows you to get a better sense of, wait a minute, red flag, like they're totally going to screw this business up. And you can sit there and saying, well, maybe it's not worth what they're trying to pay.
Right.
And the old saying, the best deals are the ones that you don't do.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that's why I'd say curiosity is probably the trump card in having a successful M&A exit.
So then on the opposite end, when someone is purchasing a business, what are a couple things that they're looking for?
It's very similar in reverse. It's you do have your strategy on that part of, a lot of times people get excited, they find an opportunity to acquire a company, then they get creative to build a strategy. You don't want to do that. That's not cool. You want to have a mind of here's your company's strategy. Here's how it would align and extend it with your M&A strategy to be able to execute with M&A to achieve those company strategies. And then really make sure that's your model, that you can clarify that and you can socialize it across your organization. So everyone's really aligned on that. That's one thing, is really be clear on strategy, and then they know when they fit. And two, it kind of protects you, because you don't want to be an executive with deal fever that does that bad deal. Like you really want to stay in line. So you have to have this clear strategy that's articulated. And it's like when you acquire a company, you got clear linkage to the strategy in the company you're acquiring. I'd say the expert network applies here on the buy side, because it is developing the capability. Like when you buy a company, you're going to screw up a lot of things. You're just not going to know better on a lot of things. And over time, you have to think of it as the muscle to build when you go through the exercise of diligence to make sure you do good, thorough diligence, quickly, quality, without distracting your team. So be efficient about it. And then at the same time that's happening, be able to plan on how this company is going to be integrated. And there's a lot that goes into it to really create that plan. It's easy to create that plan, but to execute on it, that's where it becomes really challenging. And so that's where you need to develop your team and think of how you develop that expert network internally, because you may have folks that cross your functions that have never done M&A. And if your part of your core strategy is doing M&A against your growth plan, then you need to develop that expert and think of how you're going to develop that in-house, that muscle and the expert network of M&A capability across all your functions. And that's good. Yep.
So if you're a business owner who's maybe someone in our audience thinking of selling their business, but doesn't have that established network, works with their community bank, and you're talking about finding a banker, is that just going to your existing banker and then they go up the chain and go like, oh, we need an expert here? Or is that, going outside of your network and really trying to find that expertise? So if I have if I'm a business owner role playing and I have my existing network, oh, here's my banker I've done business with for 25 years. Is that going to him to get like banking advice? I would say business lawyer, and same thing. So.
Look, multi-channel. It's all about beating the odds at the end of the day. You got the people reach out to them, great, but do better. Go on LinkedIn, do a search, reach out to people objectively. Let me create a good pool of people to talk to. And this is important. We're not going to mess around. This is a key deal to hire for us. So let's really find the best. And I'll reach out to people on LinkedIn and just saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. I'm looking for an SME in this area. I thought it'd be great to connect. And people should be willing to help with those things. When you think of just beating the odds, if you talk to 3 people, okay, what are your chances you hire the best person versus if you talk to 10 people? The more people you talk to, you're going to increase your probability of getting the right expert to fit in and handle this. And when you got the most money you're going to ever manage in single transactions, you should probably try to hire the best people to do that.
Yeah. So one last question then. What is the number one industry in the more corporate world that's selling? And what's the number one industry that's selling right now in more of the small to medium size business industry?
I think they're tech across the board.
Tech?
I think both. I want to say there's a lot of healthcare stuff going on. These are massive industries. So there's a lot of, things are swayed because of that. But just tech. Tech is really becoming democratized in an interesting way with these enablement, no-code technologies that are evolving. The Shopifys that let my 11-year-old daughter run an online store and sell handmade jewelry online. It's foyeglobe.com to give her the little plug there, but it's pretty freaking crazy and cool. But now you're starting to see the secondary market of, hey, I built the Shopify thing up to $1 million revenue. It's all drop ship products. Yep. Can I realize value and exit? And you're seeing these marketplaces get more tailored and focused around those kind of digital businesses. So on even the small level, the small to mid-size, you're seeing a massive increase. And it's just a natural progression to digitally create the company and to be able to have a model to sell the business. Versus our brick and mortar, there's a lot more going. So it's going to be a lot slower process.
Yeah,
It's going to be a lot. Here you can really get exposed to a lot of potential buyers quickly, end to end. You can create the company to sell it. So that, I think, in near and long term, you're seeing a lot of growth there.
Mhm.
And then there's just the nature of how competitive tech companies are, how stat cash the big corps are. They got to spend that money. They want to be highly competitive to innovate, so they're constantly going to be looking at the next capability they can acquire.
Awesome.
Yeah, because that's, I guess, just similar to how like the big companies like Google or Facebook, they get better by acquiring other technologies to fit in their kind of portfolio and in their playbook kind of thing, right? So
Absolutely.
I appreciate being on our podcast. If
Enlightening us.
Enlightening us. Can you please give yourself a plug in your business?
If anybody's interested in learning about mergers and acquisitions, we have over 1,500 pages of content on M&A at mascience.com. Anything you want to learn about M&A is there. So that's one thing I'm really proud of. So shout out to the marketing team at M&A Science for just being the best in the industry. I don't know anybody in our industry, to be honest, that has done such a great job of building a whole production around content for mergers and acquisitions.
Awesome. And what's the name of your podcast?
M&A Science.
Okay.
Awesome. So before we go, one last plug for our Valor Cares initiative, Joe.
Yep. So if you have a business and you just need help with a website, but you don't have the funds to build it, go to our askvalormasterminds.com website, click on the Valor Cares and submit your information. And hopefully we'll be building your website soon.
Awesome. So on behalf of our sponsors, A Advanced Septic Services and Fuse Networks, my name's Galen.
I'm Joe.
Coming at you from the BD local studios in Tacoma, Washington. Keeson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. See you guys.